Today's stuff we're going to be learning is Bava Kamma Daf Lamed Vav. Today is the this week's learning is sponsored by Adina and Danny Gewurtz in honor of the newest Meir in their family, Meir Amichai, and in loving memory of the original Meir, Adina's father, Melvin Rish, on his 22nd year at site. Dab is a man of many talents, a great Talmud Chacham community leader, and a staunch defender of Israel in both his personal and professional life. But for us, he is most remembered for the love he showered on his family and friends. The many children named after him attest to how much he is loved and missed. He would be so proud to have this newest member of the family named after him, and also with the hope that the name Meir Amichai expresses. Am Yisrael Chai. Today's talk is sponsored by Arthur Gould in Olam Hazeh and Carol Robinson in Olam Haba, in loving memory of Carol's father, Louis Robinson, Yehuda Leib ben Moshe Zichrono Livracha. Today, the first day of Hanukkah, we mark his 24th year at site. Louis was a devoted family man and active participant in his synagogue. Louis was the consummate dad. He never, something got cut off here. Oops, sorry. He never went to bed until his daughters came home safely from dates and outings. For sure, he is with Carol right now. We love him and miss him very much. Okay, we are now going to get started with our daf. So we finished yesterday, and maybe we'll go back a little bit to where we left off. We were talking about Rabbi Bar Natan and his comment about Ta'anu chitim v'hodulo b'seorim patur. If you remember, we had this issue that Rabbi Bar Natan said, if someone claims chitim, and then someone else says, oh, I don't owe you chitim, but I owe you seorim, we say that is not the same thing happening here. He's not talking about what he claimed. So therefore, what do we say? According to Rabbi Bar Natan, the one who was accused of owing wheat, who claims, I don't owe you wheat, I owe you barley, doesn't actually have to pay anything, because they're admitting to something that the person who's demanding from them isn't even asking for. Then we asked, why does he say this? It already says it in a Mishna. Now, the Mishna wasn't exactly talking about payment. The Mishna was talking about an oath, and it's not a modeh b'miktzat oath. This isn't like, I owe you part. You claim I owe you 100, and I say I only owe you 50. Okay, even though theoretically you might have thought it is, because saying I owe you barley is saying I owe you less than what you claim I owe you, because barley's worth less than wheat. But since it's not the same item that we're discussing, it's not an amount of money, and you say it's X amount of money, and I say it's less, it's two totally different things. You're exempt. But basically, it sounds like it's kind of saying the same thing, to which the Gemara answered, well, what it's really coming to teach you, you might have thought that when it says patur, it means patur from paying wheat, but you still have to pay barley. Comes Rabbi Bar Natan and says, no, you don't have to pay barley at all. And then we said, but this seems to go against our Mishnah. And then we made this assumption from our Mishnah, which was basically the same assumption we made when we first read the Mishnah, which is, if Naomi's has two oxen that gore two of, Ruth has two oxen that gore two of Naomi's oxen. And now, Ruth claims she doesn't want to pay so much money, so she claims, oh, it was my small one that attacked your large one, and it was my large one that attacked your small one. And with that way, since you only pay shor tam from the body of the animal, right, she'll get away with paying less money, because the small one won't cover the damages entirely of the big animal, and then she'll end up paying less. And Naomi says, no, it's the opposite. And then the problem is that the assumption was, the Mishnah says, right? Naomi, if she wants to get the full amount, she has to prove it. But it sounded like if she doesn't prove it, then what would happen? Well, she'd at least get the smaller amount, right? What Naomi is claiming, what Ruth is claiming, which is my small one attacked your large one, and my large one attacked your small one. So at least that Naomi will be able to collect. But that's what we assume the Mishnah means, that she could at least collect. But according to Seolim chitim thing, this is your little one attacked my big one, and your big one attacked my little one. They're not agreeing on details here, right? The other one says, no, the big one attacked the big one, the little one attacked the little one, and that's what I'm claiming damages for. So that means, right, Naomi's basically claiming your big animal belongs to me, and Ruth is saying my small animal belongs to you, and that's two different claims. So how would Rabbi Bar Natan deal with that? To which we answered, you misunderstood the inference from the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, until Naomi proves it, right? If she can prove it, great. If not, she gets nothing. That's basically what the Gemara said. That was in the words, Ra'oili tova ema. She can get it, but only if she proves it. If not, she gets zero. She can't claim it because it's Rabbi Bar Natan, apples and oranges. To which the Gemara said, but wait, there's a bright that says she does get it. To which we answered, and that's what we left with, ditafas. The case is if she already took it. If Naomi grabbed both of the shvarim and they're already in her hands, then again, we have the principle, the burden is on Ruth now to prove to take it back. Okay, and that's why Naomi can get it, but not, she didn't grab it, then no. This whole grabbing thing is very concerning. Is that teaching us to be bullies? Is it teaching us to be aggressive? Right? So it's a good question. It's a very hard concept to deal with, but it does come up in many cases. Some people think that it's because the person who grabs it is so sure that they're right, and that maybe that gives them, because we don't know who's right here. And in dealing, we use this grabbing issue when we're talking about sfekot and issues where we just don't know what the halacha is. So maybe the person who's the strongest, it's often because they're really right, and therefore they care, they're passionate about it, and they grab it, and maybe that gives them some sort of right. Some people say, no, it really isn't that. I remember learning with Rabbi Lichtenstein, Zatzal used to call it, that one of the options was saying it's choka jungle, like the jungle, and that it's kind of just, when we have laws of sfekot, sometimes we just have to let nature take its course. And that's what happens. The bullies sometimes win, and they get more power. It's hard to understand the concept. We will come across it in other contexts, and we'll discuss as we go. So now we're going to do the exact same thing. We're 4 lines from the bottom of Lamed Hamubet with the next line in the Mishnah. So I wanted to review that way. Number one, it was always good to review, and also it's going to build for this. Now this we can run through because it's the exact same thing. The Mishnah also gave a case not where one was big, one was small, but the ones who Naomi's oxen that were attacked, one was big, one was small. But Ruth's animals who attacked, it wasn't big or small, it was tam and muad. So basically, if it was the tam, right, who kills the big one, they're only going to pay half damages of the big one. If it was the muad who killed the big one, then the muad's going to have to pay full damages. So obviously, right, Naomi's going to claim, oh, your big animal, your muad animal attacked my big animal to get the most. And Ruth is going to claim, what are you talking about? It was my shor tam that attacked your big one. It was my muad that attacked your small one to get out of pain. So again, Hanizak omer muad iziket hagadol v'tamet hakatan, hamazik omer loki ela tamet hagadol u'muad hakatan. So that's what I just said. Each one claims, right? The smaller, the muad or the tam attack the bigger or the smaller, depending on which way goes to their advantage. So Naomi has to prove it. If she can't prove it, if she can't prove it, it doesn't say. Until she can prove it, right? She's not going to be able to get what she claims. But what if she doesn't prove it? So we assumed she'll at least get what Ruth claims, right? Which is that the tam attacked your big animal. At least she can get that. Same problem. They're right. In the end, they're totally disagreeing about details. Ruth said it was my tam, and Naomi said it was your muad. Now it's true they each attacked each one, but which one attacked which? She shouldn't be able to get anything. To which the answer, Ra'oi Litova Ein. Same thing as before. If, again, Ra'oi Litol, we're going to go with Rashi's interpretation. Ra'oi Litol means Naomi can get it if she proves it. Ve'ein lo, but if she doesn't prove it, she doesn't get anything. Okay? She gets nothing because it's exactly Rabbi Bar Natan's case of the barley and the wheat. Tanya, but how can you say that? There's a Tosefta, like we read yesterday, same continuation, that's Tosefta. In this case, you pay the smaller animals damages from the muad one, meaning you're going to get the less amount of damages, but you are going to get damages. And the gadol min atam, and you're going to pay from the short tam, you're going to pay the damages for the big one. So you'll get half damages only for that, but at least you'll get. So how do we explain that? Ditafas. So our Mishnah is talking, right, that Tosefta, is talking about if Naomi grabbed both animals, then she can get that. But if she didn't grab both animals, she won't get anything. Now we're going to move on to understand another line in the Mishnah that we didn't understand. The case was, and it's at the very top of Lamed Hamubet, im hayu shnehem shel ish echad, shnehem chayavim. We have 2 oxen chasing another one. Both are owned by the same owner. And we know that one gored. We just don't know which one. So in any case, right, and let's say the payment's the same, okay? So, shnehem chayavim, right? Let's assume both are gadol, both are tam, both are muad. It doesn't matter, right? But they're both the same. Then both are liable. Now, when we read the Mishnah, we said this doesn't make any sense. What does it mean both are liable? There's one owner, right? The case before, they were talking about 2 different oxen chasing a third oxen, and each ox was owned by a different owner. So then maybe, and then it said shnehem ptulim, they were both exempt. So this says shnehem chayavim, it sounds like both owners. What 2 owners are there? There aren't 2 owners, there's only one owner, right? Because again, we're obviously talking about the owner of the oxen who attacked and not the owner of the ox who was damaged. So if both these belong to Ruth, Ruth is going to have to pay. Now, Ruth is going to have to pay no matter what, because it doesn't matter which shor attacked. Either which way, she's liable. So Amale Rava mi Parzika le Ravashi. So right now, they just assume it means Ruth has to pay, which we know. But the fact that they use the language Nehem Chayavim, Rava mi Parzika assumes and says to Ravashi, Shma mina, are we to infer from here, which sounds ridiculous according to other things we know, Shvarim tamim shiziku ratzami zegove. If we have a case like this, where two shor toms, one of them damaged, we don't know which one, but we know for sure is one of them, then Naomi can collect from either one. She can demand. Now, remember what we learned. Shor tam ishtalemi gufo. That means if we go with, especially Rabbi Akiva, who says the shor tam is already mishuabad. We even said, according to Rabbi Yishmael, theoretically, it could be mishuabad. If you don't remember Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva, we're going to get back to them today, and I'll review then. But basically, we learned that there's a shibud, there's a lien on the shor tam. Now, that makes sense if there's one shor tam that damaged, and it's obvious which one. But comes Rav and he says, Shneim chayavim, it sounds like, obviously, Naomi's not going to get two shors for the price of one, right? She got one shor damaged by one shor. We just don't know which one. So Rava says, Rava mi Parzika, not the regular Rava, but he says, it sounds like Naomi can collect with whichever shor she wants. She gets to choose because both are lien to her. He says, that's ridiculous. You can't have two liens from one shor. Doesn't make any sense. But that's what it sounds like the Mishnah is telling us. So how could that be? So Rav Ashi says, right, because it doesn't make sense. There can't be two liens. There's only one lien. And remember, the person who's trying to collect is always with his hand on the, on the bottom, like yado ala tachtona. He's always the weaker, the underdog, because he's trying to take something out. So Naomi here is trying to get something out of Ruth. There's no way that out of a doubt, she's not sure which one is lien to her. She gets to take anyone she wants. Can't possibly be. But that's what he thought the Mishnah was saying. So he says, I don't get it. So now we have to explain the Mishnah. So we're going to try one way, and we're going to have a bit of a back and forth till we actually understand what this Mishnah is talking about. So we thought it was talking about a shor tam. Now all of a sudden we say, oh no, it's talking about a shor muad. So now they say, okay, and then how does that resolve it? Because then shneim chayavim, right? No matter what, she gets paid, basically. Saying she could get paid from that one, she'd get paid from that one, she could even get money paid to her, right? And no matter what, she's going to get paid because it's a shor muad. So then they say, Iba muadin, you're going to say the Mishnah is talking about a shor muad case? Well, if this is a shor muad case, then we assume the continuation is a shor muad case, and we know that that's not. Why not? In Maseifa, the continuation, haya echad gadol ve'echad katan. Remember, one was big, one was small. We started with this before. Hanizak omer gadol izik, v'amazak omer lo ki ela katan izik. So now, right now, we have two animals. One was big, one was small. And Naomi is claiming your big one attacked my big one, your small one attacked my small one. And Ruth is saying, no, my small one attacked your big one, and my big one attacked your small one. Why would Ruth say that? If it's a shor muad, Ruth has to pay full damages for both animals. It's irrelevant which of her animals gored. So it must be it's a shor tam, because if it's a shor tam, it's very relevant, because again, you only get paid the amount of what you're going to pay half damages from your shor. So you want to say the small one attacked the big one so that you end up paying less than half damages, because you won't have to pay, let's say the big shor was ruined by 200, you have to pay 100, but your little shor is only worth 80. So you're not going to pay more than 80. So that's in Ruth's best interest. But that's only if it's a short time. If it's a shor muad, it's not relevant. So, right, so even muadim, what's the relevance? If it's a shor muad, she has to pay full damages anyway. Which animal gored which animal of Ruth's is a totally irrelevant part to the picture. So, sof to me Torah ma'alya baya l'shlume. So what do they answer? Right, I'm sorry, that's the continuation of the question, sorry. In the end, it's the money, right? It's the money of the shor muad, the value of the damage. So it's irrelevant. So it can't be, if we say that our case, the shneim chayavim, is a shor muad, doesn't make sense to say the next case is a shor muad. So the Gemara says, fine, Sefer b'tamim b'reisha b'muadim, fine, we have different cases in the Mishnah. One is a shor tam, one is a shor muad. Okay. To which, we're still going to have a problem, because One issue we really didn't address yet was what? Even muadin chayavim. If you're going to say it's a shor muad, and it says you're liable, what should it say? Chayav gaver mebai. Like who's responsible? Are the shors responsible? The two oxen? No. The shneim chayavim sounds like it's talking about the oxen. It still doesn't match the language. If it was a shor muad, and one of them was, both were shor muad. One of them of Ruth's animals attacked Naomi's. Ruth will have to pay damages. That's all it means. Why should it say shnehem chayavim? It doesn't make any sense. So number one, chayavim doesn't make sense in plural. It should be chayav the person. Vitu, my shnehem. And also not both. It's only one. So this doesn't make any sense. So they reject this reading entirely. And now we go back to square one. And we're going to say it's a short time. Now, what was our problem? Our problem was, it sounds like if Naomi wants, she can collect from any shore she wants, right? She can have both shores are lean to this payment for the damages. That didn't make any sense. So how did they explain the shnehem chayvim? Rabbi Akiva. If you remember, what did Rabbi Akiva hold? Rabbi Akiva held that when Ruth's shor tam attacks Naomi's shor, okay, whatever shor it is, doesn't matter. Ruth's ox is now, from the moment that this happens, is partially owned by Naomi. Naomi is already a partner in this because part of it is going to go to pay Naomi. So now, if you hold that way, what they're trying to say here is, it doesn't mean shnehem chayavim. What it means is, if both of them, okay, it says both of them are liable. What it means is, if both of them are still here, meaning, okay, one of Ruth's animals didn't get lost in the meantime. But we have a case where one of the two oxen that Ruth owns, who are right in front of us right now, they're here, they didn't get lost, one of them. Both of them are in existence. We'll talk about the case where they get lost in a minute. If both are in existence, then what? Then Naomi can collect from one of them. Why? Because Ruth has no claim. This is, if you remember, we had a case where there were 4 fields and I have a path. We have like an agreement, and we know that I was given it, like, I think it was orphans maybe, and they know that the father had given me a path through one of their fields, but they don't know which one, right? And if all 4 fields are owned by the same people, I can claim a path in any one of them, because no matter what, I have a path through your field. If they're 4 different owners, then I don't get anything, because I'm right? They're going to have to, they can always say, oh, it wasn't me, it was the neighbor. And the other guy says, what do you mean? It wasn't me, it was the neighbor. And they can push me off. But if it's all the same owner, there's nothing to do. And that's what they're saying. If there are 2 oxen of Ruth's, and they're both here right now, then Naomi, now she can't choose which one. That was the whole problem, what we started with. She can't choose which one, but Ruth will have to give her one of them. Ruth gets to choose, because why? Because there's a lien on one of them. We just don't know which one. So, if Naomi can prove it, great. If not, Ruth will have to give her one, because no matter what, one of them is liable, but Ruth gets to choose which one. But the point is, shnehem is, if both are there, then chayavim. It doesn't really relate to the chayavim, because it's still chayav, but that is left a bit of a question. But but if both aren't there anymore, let's say one of Ruth's oxen got lost in the meantime, and we go to court, Naomi goes to court with Ruth and says, pay up. At this point, Ruth doesn't have to pay. Because why? Ruth can say, listen, you can't prove that this is the one, because at this point, Ruth doesn't have the 2 oxen anymore. Now, while it's true that one of Ruth's oxen caused the damage, remember, shor tam, according to Rabbi Akiva, mishalem migufo, only, it's not an obligation. Remember, Rabbi Yishmael said, as soon as it happens, Naomi becomes a creditor of Ruth's, and she can demand money from her. But according to Rabbi Akiva, no, as soon as it happens, what happens? The shor that attacked becomes partly owned by Ruth and Naomi. But the problem is, maybe it was the one that got lost. So Ruth can say, hey, I don't have a shor to give you, you can't prove that the one that I still have is the one that did the damage. And therefore, what it means, shnehem chayavim, is if both were owned by Ruth, only if both are here right now can we make you pay. Otherwise, Naomi won't get anything. And with that difficult situation, Hadran ala chaminiach. With that, we finish parak chaminiach etakad. Moving on to a new chapter. This is one of those mathematical mishnayot. It's actually not so complicated, although I did, it's going to be complicated to understand what at all Rabbi Meir is talking about. The Gemara is not going to understand it right away, so we're not going to understand it right away when we read it. Then we're going to have Rabbi Shimon, and for that is the study guide for today, which I mapped out how Rabbi Shimon works. That's the one that is a little bit complicated mathematically, but in the end, it's really not so complicated. It just looks a little overwhelming. But we're going to have a case where shor shenagach arba'a v'chamisha shvarim ze'ar chazeh. First of all, 4 or 5 is a favorite of the Mishnayot. They like to say it. So it's, 3 is a typical number. And then once you get beyond that, it's 4 or 5, usually they say. Comes up in a lot of Mishnayot. You might remember Peri Mefanim of Shabbat is Mefanim arbo chamesh kupot b'Shabbat. You can move 4 or 5, but not more than that. Okay, so anyway, shor shenagach arba'a v'chamisha shvarim ze'ar chazeh. Okay, what's funny is the Mishnah is going to give an example, okay, of the 4 or 5, and they're only going to give an example where it attacks 3 and not 4 or 5. But right now we have 4 or 5. So my animal, and we're assuming the shor is a short time, okay, it wasn't warned in between, and it just goes and attacks one, then it attacks another, another. And each one is owned by a different person. Yishalem la'acharon shebahem. So who gets the payment? Because remember, short time, you only pay from the animal itself. So the animal itself is limited to the value of the animal. So who's going to get? The last one. Okay, we're not going to understand this yet. Why? We're going to have to figure it out later. And if there's anything left over, because remember, let's say the shor was 200 and it attacked an animal worth 200, it only has to pay half damages. So it pays 100. So the animal has more. So the last one will get the money. And then the one before that will get the money. And if there's anything left than the one before that, so the order is not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, depending on how much is left. Could be some people will get nothing. That's just a kind of summary. Well, the end one is going to win out. They'll get the most reward. Divrei Rabbi Meir. Okay, we're going to leave it because we don't really understand yet. We'll get to it. Rabbi Shimon Omer, and as we understand how it works. Okay, let's take even 250 is better. Okay, a 250 animal attacks a 200 animal, and every time it's going to attack an animal worth 200. So the first one will get half damages, 100, right? The 125 will be left with the owner. The next one will get 100, because again, the damage was 100 and the animal still has 125 worth of value. The next one will get 25. And again, the one before, next one, number 5, then number 4, and then number 3 will get 25, and number 2 and 1 will end up with nothing. That's what he says. Why he says that, we don't know. Rabbi Shimon Omer. For this, I want to pull up the study guide and share my screen. I'm sorry, that was the wrong screen. Okay. Let's try again. Okay, here we go. So now we have Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon Omer, shor shaveh 200 shenagach l'shor shaveh 200. So our basic case, 200, 200. So we have one shor, Ruth's shor attacks Naomi's shor. I'm sorry. Yeah, Ruth attacks Naomi's shor. Naomi's shor was worth 200. Naomi's shor is no longer. That's why I put an X through it. Is no longer. Now what happens? Well, what happens is, okay, and by the way, we're going to make it as simple as possible. The dead animal's worth nothing. So the damage is 200 round. We already know the halacha. We're going to split this shor in half, okay? And now, this is all going to go according to Rabbi Akiva, who says not that there's that basically Ruth incurred a debt of 100. No, it's that the shor becomes immediately owned by both. So right now, as soon as the act happens, after the first shor was attacked, this shor is now jointly owned by Ruth and Naomi. Shor 1 and shor 2, right? Here I wrote shor meaning the animal, but it's the owner of the animal. So they each now have one shor split between the two of them worth 100. They're both co-owners of it. So because they're co-owners, when the next shor gets damaged, they're each going to have to pay half of what they have. You follow? And that's going to be the theory. As soon as you get that, you'll understand. Once they become co-owners, the payment is equal among both of them. And the same thing's going to happen when the third guy gets part of it, because the third person's also going to be a part owner. And then each is going to have to pay half of what they get. So chazar v'nagach shor achil. So now we're up to the third attack, the second attack on the third shor. And it was again shaveh 200. Ha'acharon notel maneh. So now, the one who got attacked, 200, well, got attacked by a shor that's still worth 200. It's just split between two owners, but it's still worth 200. So they're going to get 100's worth of damage. And shelefanav zenotel 50 zuz v'zenotel 50 zuz. So now what will happen? So the owner is going to get the owner of the third shor who now got gored. Okay, that owner is going to get 100 from the shor. What's left? What's left is 100, but the 100 is split between two other people, right? Between the owner of the first, Ruth, and Naomi, who got gored, right? Who her shor got gored. So basically what happens is, in simple terms, since Naomi had ownership over half the shor, which was 100, and Ruth had ownership over half the shor, which was 100. So each one pays half of that, which is 50, gives it to the new owner, let's call her Yael, of the third shor that got attacked. So Yael gets 50 from each, that's 100, and each is left with 50. So we now have one shor. Now, this wasn't divided up yet. The shor is still there. The shor is still owned by them, because ultimately what are they going to have to do? They're going to sell the shor and split the money like this. But the question is, since Rabbi Akiva holds that as soon as the act happens, everybody becomes a joint owner, we're going to see that the joint ownership isn't shared 50-50 here, right? Because each time it's going to be shared 50-50 between the new person who got gored and the previous owners, okay? The previous people who got gored and the original owner. So that's going to be the next one. Chazar v'nagach shor acher, and the Mishna is only going to talk about 3 negichot, even though there were 4 or 5 in the first line, but the Mishna is going to go into detail, because once you get the point, you get the point. You can keep going further and further. But the next case, what happens? So the shor is already split between, right, 3 people. Ruth, Naomi each own 50 of the shor, and Yael now owns 100 of the shor. So when it's nogeach again, who's a shor shaveh 200, another one worth 200, acharon notel maneh. So again, the owner of shor number 4 is going to get 100 because they just got damaged. So they get half the shor. The shor is still in existence. They get half the shor. And the one who had 100, Yael, who owned 100 of it, she's now down to 50 because she has to give half of hers. And owner 1 and 2, Ruth and Naomi, both have to give half of theirs. So they each give 25 and are left with 25. So again, shelefanav 50 zuz. So Yael, owner number 3 of the second one that was gored, ends up with 50. And Shnaim Arishonim dinar zahav. And owner 1, which is Ruth, and gored 1, which is Naomi, both end up with only 25. So you see how this keeps going. And then, the next would be 12, 12, 25, 50, 100. Okay, you'd have 5 and everyone would own, right? Everyone always has to give up half of what they have because they're all joint owners. But as you see, because every time they have to pay 100 to the new person who was gored, so it ends up getting divided differently as it goes down. It sounds a little complicated. It's not so complicated. Now the Gemara says, "Manitim mani." So now we want to understand. Okay, so let me address your question. I kind of said it very quickly, but I guess I wasn't clear about it. How can it be a short time if it already gored several oxen? The idea is that it gored them one after the other without being warned in between. So because it was never warned, you can only be a shor muad if you warned the owner. They didn't warn the owner. So that's why this isn't a shor muad yet, because what happens is this happens in succession. And that's why, again, Rabbi Akiva kicks in right away. We haven't gone to court. Nobody owns the animal yet, but the ownership kicks in immediately because that's what Rabbi Akiva says. As soon as my ox gores yours, my ox becomes yours, half, right? Or whatever I owe you of my ox becomes yours. So this case was half-half because they picked an easy case to do the math on. Could be obviously much more complicated if one was worth 200 and the other one was damaged more or less, or being a less round number. So now we just don't understand Rabbi Meir. So the Gemara asks, "Manitim mani." When they say who's the Mishna, according to they mean the Kamma or Rabbi Meir in our Mishna. Diloka Rabbi Yishmael, Diloka Rabbi Akiva. It doesn't seem to match Rabbi Yishmael that it's just an obligation, okay, and you just have to pay the money. And it doesn't seem to match Rabbi Akiva, who says you're joint owners. Well, if you're joint owners, you get to the conclusion that Rabbi Shimon does. That's why Rabbi Meir doesn't match with Rabbi Akiva. But we'll read it inside in a minute. Ike Rabbi Yishmael, if it's Rabbi Yishmael, that basically they owe money to the other, Ruth owes to Naomi, and then Ruth will owe to the next person, and Ruth will owe to the next person, right? Then, Hai acharon niskal. It shouldn't say the last one wins out. It's the opposite. It should be Rishon niskar mebayale. let's play it out. If Ruth's ox gores Naomi's ox, and Ruth's ox is worth 200, and Naomi was damaged 200, which means half damage is 100, Ruth pays Naomi 100. Okay, simple. That happens first. Then, okay, even if, right, it doesn't happen, it doesn't matter. That's the order. So that's what how we're going to pay. Then Ruth's ox goes and gores Yael's ox. So she owes 100 and she still has 100. Great, she'll pay 100. If Ruth's ox now gores another ox, Ruth's ox is worth nothing at this point. Ruth has no rights to the ox anymore. So even if the ox gores, she never has to pay more than the value of her ox. So basically, as long as it's a short time, she pays 100, 100, nothing, 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 all successive gorings. So it shouldn't be the last one is rewarded. It should be the opposite. The first one is rewarded. And Rabbi Akiva, if it's you're going to say like Rabbi Akiva that it's jointly owned, well, this line doesn't make sense. Okay, and as we do this, we're turning now to Amud Bet. It says if there's any extra, it goes to the person before. Now, according to what we just learned, according to Rabbi Shimon, which we played out, what do we say? It's true the acharon is niskar in the end, right? That's what we saw. The last one's going to get more. It actually seems to fit. But what's the problem? What happens to the extra according to Rabbi Meir? Whatever's left over goes to the one before. And only if there's leftover does it go to the one before. And only if there's still more left over, it goes to the one before. According to Rabbi Akiva, since they're all joint owners, each one is still going to have something, right? It's split among the original people, right? Around the beginning, it's split among everybody. Now, maybe not equally. Remember, we ended up with 25, 25, 50, 100. And we could even end up with less as we go on. But it is split, divided between everyone. It's not like it all goes to the person before, and then only if there's left does it go to the person before, which is what Rabbi Meir said. So neither one seems to make sense. So in order to resolve this, we're going to have to do again what's called an ukimta. And it's going to go back to this issue of tafas. Okay, what's an ukimta? It's when we say the Mishnah, it really doesn't mean in every normal case. We're going to say the following. I'm a Rav. Lo olam ki Rabbi Yishmael. Damar ba'alei chovot minhu. Really, it's Rabbi Yishmael that basically says Ruth incurs a debt every time her ox gores someone. And really, in a basic, typical case, it's going to be Rishon Niskal, which is the first one's going to get their full value. The second one will only get if there's still enough of the animal left. And the third one will get only if there's leftover, etc. That's not what the Mishnah was referring to, though. The Mishnah was referring to a unique case. This is very important to understand. It was referring to a very specific case, which was what? Okay, so again, udekas shelach, now, balei chavot ninu means, right? And then you had this difficulty because you said, acharon iskal, it shouldn't be the last one wins out, it should be rishon iskal. The first one who gets gored should have the most. Mibaile, it should have said that. So to answer that question, they say, hey bet ayin is hacha b'mayaskina, what is the case? Kigon shetfaso nizak ligvot hemenu, v'naseh alav kishomer sachar l'nizakim. This is a big ukimta. What they're saying is, if Ruth's ox gored Naomi's ox, and Naomi grabs Ruth's shor in order to get paid. Now, this is very interesting. Ruth grabs the ox. How much of the ox belongs to her now? In other words, she's supposed to collect 100. She grabs something that's worth 200. So she's now holding Ruth's ox, right? Which eventually the court's going to say, okay, give 100 back to Ruth because you took too much. But yes, you are deserving of part of the ox, but sell it and give Ruth half the amount. But it's now in Ruth's sorry, confusing my names. It's now in Naomi's possession. Okay, again, Naomi was the one whose ox got gored. She lost her ox. She grabs Ruth's because she said, remember, shor tam is mishalemi gufo. So she grabs something that's supposed to be hers, but again, only half of it's really hers. But that doesn't matter because right now, the whole ox is in her possession. Now, she becomes like a shomer sachar. Whoa, where did we get to this? Okay, what's a shomer sachar? It's someone who watches over someone's item and gets paid for it. And we learned before that shomer assumes responsibility for damages. So that means if Naomi steals Ruth's shor in order to get paid, now, even though the shor is only half owned by her at this point, she's going to have to return half to Ruth, the shor is in her possession. So now what happened was, it wasn't that Ruth's ox gored Naomi's, Yael's, Tamar's all at once. It gored Naomi's and Naomi grabbed the ox. Then it gored Yael's ox and then Yael grabbed the ox. Then it gored Tamar's ox, and then Tamar grabbed the ox. And every time, okay, again, this is not that it's supposed to happen like this. It's if this happens like this, that's a new kimta. It's to say, right? Like Haminiachat Takad, we said, oh, it can't be Haminiachat Takad. It would have to be in the dark. It would have to be, right? When they filled up Rishut Rabim, it seems a little unrealistic, but it doesn't make sense otherwise. So they have to explain it this way. So now what happens? Each one becomes a shomer sachar. Now, why are they like a shomer that gets money? Because they're getting a benefit. What's their benefit? Their benefit is that they don't have to go to court to collect any money because it's already in their possession. So it's like they're getting paid for watching it. So now, because getting paid means you get a benefit, and that's their benefit, that they don't have to collect now. So if that's the case, what happens? Well, now it makes sense why the last one's going to win out. Because if Naomi Naomi thought it was a smart move that she grabbed the ox, but in the end, it's bad for her because if she hadn't grabbed the ox, we'd hold like Rabbi Yishmael. And no matter what, Ruth's going to have to pay her, and she's going to get first, and Yael will get second, and Tamar will only get if there's anything left. But if she grabs it, she becomes liable for damages. So now, after she grabbed it, the ox went and gored Yael's ox. When the ox gored Yael's ox, who's now liable for damages? Naomi. Now, because she was watching it. When Naomi's liable for damages, how much does she have to pay? We're going to just assume everyone was 200. So she's going to have to pay 100 because it's half damages. It's a short time. Well, remember, she's paying this shor, right? She has to pay from this shor, of which 100 belongs to her. That 100 is going to go fully to Yael, and the other 100 she's going to have to return to Ruth. Now, if Yael comes and grabs the ox from her, the same thing's going to happen. She grabs it to pay for her 100 of damages. And now the ox gores someone else. So now Yael's responsible for the ox goring Tamar. So Tamar's ox. So now, again, she'll have to pay the 100 that belongs to her, and the other 100 is whose? It's Ruth's. Because in the end, right, everybody had to pass on their share of it to the next person. So that's why in the end, only the last person, again, this is all assuming that they each grabbed, okay? They each grabbed the shor each time. Then the last one's going to actually win out, because if the ox doesn't gore after that, they'll have the shor in their possession, of which 100 will be theirs, and the court will remove 100 and give it back to Ruth. That's the case. So now the question is, does that fit with the words? So let's see. So, wait, there's a problem. Remember they said if there's any extra, it'll go back to the one before. That's not what we just said. If there's any extra, which there is, because it was worth 100 and the damage was 200, who does it go back to? Ruth, the original owner. It should have said the extra goes back to the original owner. So Ravina says, no, this is how you read it. If the case got more complicated, which was, okay, im yesh bo motal benizakav yachzir l'shal fanav. What does that mean? If, let's start with our case, 200 damage to 200. So split 50-50, right? In other words, Naomi grabs the whole ox. Really only 100 was hers. 100 is supposed to go back to Ruth. But that doesn't happen yet because immediately it gores someone else. So now the ox gores Yael's. Let's say, now until now we said, let's say the damage was 200 and she owes 100. But let's say, okay, remember, of that ox, how much does Naomi own? 100 of it. Let's say the ox then gored 160 worth of damages of the next ox, of Yael's ox, which means how much is Naomi supposed to pay? Only 80. So if she's only supposed to pay 80, she gets to keep the 20. That's what it means, okay? So she might keep some of it depending on, so in that case, what will happen? Yael will grab this animal, of which only 80 is hers, 20 is Naomi's, and 100 is Ruth's. Okay, that's what it meant. It'll go to the person before. So now, V'chein ki ata Ravin amar Rabbi Yochanan, and proof for this reading of this Mishnah is going to be that Ravin also said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Mishum pshiat shomrim naguba. This Mishnah is all about the pshi'ah of a shomer. That means it was somebody who was watching the shor who was negligent. And that's what we're talking about, where we're removing this from basic laws of damages. We're saying it's a law of a shomer. And who could be a shomer if not someone who grabbed it as payment for their loan, even though the whole shor isn't really theirs. And then again, they become responsible for the damages because they had the shor in their possession. You can't make Ruth, right? The whole premise of this is you can't make Ruth liable for damages that her ox did when she was under someone else's house, right? Wasn't her responsibility if that person, so to speak, stole it from her, right? Now, it's true they had somewhat rights to it, but it was kind of like stealing, and they became a shomer over it, really, because half of it was theirs and half of it was Ruth's. So now they say, wait a minute. Now we're going to have a different problem, which is b'mayu kimta. You're going to say that Rabbi Meir is Rabbi Yishmael. But then you're going to have a problem with the next case. Now, right now, they're just going to read through. I'm going to read it without translating because we already went through the whole case, but we're going to read this next part of the Mishna. Rabbi Shimon omer, shor shaveh 200, shenagach shor shaveh 200, ve'ena nevela yafa klum, right? 200, and the nevela is worth nothing. Zeno talmaneh v'zeno talmaneh, they each get 100. Chazar v'nagach shor achel shaveh 200, then it scored another one worth 200. Acharon no talmaneh, that person gets 100, v'shalafanav, and then they split it between the other two people. Zeno tel 50 zuz, v'zeno tel 50 zuz. Each one gets 50. Chazar v'nagach shor shaveh 200, we're just quoting. If then it went and gored a third one, we end up with 150, 25, 25. Now, that whole Mishnah is premised on Atan Rabbi Akiva, Amar Torah Deshutvehu. Reisha Rabbi Yishmael, V'Sefa Rabbi Akiva. Right now, it's a bit of a strange question, and I'll explain why in a minute. But right now, they're going to say, so Rabbi Meir is Rabbi Yishmael, and Rabbi Shimon is Rabbi Akiva, which you might say, okay, so that could be. They're two different opinions. But they're setting it up like we've seen before. Sometimes we have a Mishnah which doesn't show two different opinions, and we say, but that line seems to match this person, and that one seems to match this person. That doesn't make any sense. This is. So they're doing that with this Mishnah, even though they're two different opinions. So one could say very easily, that's not even a question. One holds like Rabbi Yishmael, one holds like Rabbi Akiva. But the commentaries claim that what's going on here is, if really that was their debate, first of all, we already have a Mishnah with the debate Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Akiva, and this is just a ramification of that debate. So it's a little weird that the Gemara, first of all, wouldn't comment on it, wouldn't just say, I hold like Rabbi Akiva, I hold like Rabbi Yishmael, or not clear exactly why the Gemara is puzzled by this. In the end, the Gemara is going to say, don't be puzzled by this. But they're going to answer it the way they've answered it in other cases where it looks like it's one person saying two different things. If you remember, we had this twice already in our Masechet. And they said, yeah, Amra'ing. He said, yeah, I don't have a problem with this. Daha Amar le Shmuel Rav Yehuda, because remember, Shmuel said to Rav Yehuda about a different Mishnah, which we then used twice already. Shinina, you smart child, shvok matnita b'tabatai. Leave the Mishnah, follow me, meaning leave your question on the Mishnah and follow me with the way I interpret the Mishnah. Reisha Rabbi Yishmael v'Sefer Rabbi Akiva. Okay, there it wasn't Rabbi Yishmael or Rabbi Akiva, but they're quoting him there and saying, just like he said there, this could be one opinion, that could be another opinion. Say the same thing here. Okay, basically, we're going to assume that the same way Shmuel said it in some other case, you could say the same thing here. Yeah, it's true. Rabbi Meir follows Rabbi Yishmael, and Rabbi Shimon follows Rabbi Akiva, and don't be bothered by that. Now we're going to leave our sugya for a minute, and we're going to try to prove something totally off topic from one line of our Mishnah, or almost from what's not said in our Mishnah. Tnan hatam hatokea lechavero. Skipping the part of parentheses, parentheses usually says it's really doesn't belong here. Whether it does or doesn't, it's a good question. It's not such a significant line anyway. Tanan hatam, it says in a Mishnah somewhere else. Hatokea lechavero noten lo sela. If you blow a shofar in someone's ear or a loud noise, or possibly you smack him on the ear, there's no damage done. Okay, assuming you didn't damage their eardrum and cause actual damage, but you bothered them. No lo sela. You have to pay a sela. Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Yossi clearly maneh. Now this is a huge difference. A sela is usually 4 zuz. Okay, I say usually because we're going to discuss exactly what the value of the sela is. And a maneh is 100 zuz. First of all, that's a huge discrepancy. Okay, but we're not dealing with that right now. And it's interesting because it's all about how much humiliation do you suffer or pain do you suffer from someone blowing in your ear. Assumption seems to be the humiliation or the embarrassment by doing this. That's what you're paying for. So now he wants to know how much do you pay. Okay. Now, how gavra ditaka lachavre? So we have this machloket. Do you pay a sela or do you pay a maneh? Now we have a case. So gavra ditaka lachavre. Somebody did this. Shalchi Rav Tuvia Barmatna l'kamed Rav Yosef. So Rav Tuvia Barmatna gets the case. He writes a letter to Rav Yosef and says, I need some help. Sela tzuri tnan or sela medina tnan? What type of sela are we talking about? A sela could mean, sela means two different things. A sela could be in the maneha tzuri, okay, in the tzuri currency, a sela is 4 zuz. In the medina currency, okay, like the on the street currency, it's an eighth of the value. It's a half a zuz, which, by the way, would make this machloket extreme. Half a zuz versus 100 zuz, that's 200 times the amount. I mean, already there's a huge discrepancy, 4 zuz to 100 zuz, but even more so this. So he wants to know what is, because he wants to collect, and he doesn't know what's he supposed to collect payment from. He's ruling in the case. How much is he supposed to collect? Amalei Tanitua. He says we can learn it from our Mishnah. Ushnaim harishonim dinar zahav. The last case our Mishnah brought was 25, 25, 50, 100, right? That was the division. And it said dinar zahav. Why it say dinar, right? There's one coin, a dinar, which is worth 25. What does this have to do with anything? It's a very strange proof. Isa kadatach tana, tane tana sela medina. When the question is, when the Mishnah in general talks about a sela, which sela do they mean? So if you want to say it was a sela medina, which is a half a zuz, niflog b'nitnea trace of a sela. The assumption is that the Gemara didn't bring the next case of the 4th ox being gored, and maybe they think so because it started with 4 or 5, and then it only gave 3 examples, right, of 3 oxen being gored. It didn't go further down because it was going to have to say that you'll be left with 12 and a half, and they don't like 12 and a half. So if sela was worth a half, it would have worked nicely because they would have said 12 and a sela. And then at least it was something, it didn't have to get into halves. Okay, why it would have bothered them to say a half, I don't know. But it would have been 12 and a sela, and it would have worked perfectly. So must be a sela is not a half a zuz, because it didn't say 12 and a sela, and it didn't even say that case because it didn't want to get to some unround number of halves, right? Like it's too complicated to say 12 and a half. So they just left it at round. First of all, in general, they like round numbers in the Gemara. It's true. They talk a lot in round numbers. They don't really do decimals and stuff. So they didn't want to do fractions. But if a sela was worth that fraction, it would have been nice. They would have said sela. So the fact that it's not in the Mishnah proves it, to which the Gemara says, what are you talking about? Tana kiruchla, line beleza, what? Is that the Tana lists everything? No, they just stopped at 3 because it was enough. Can't learn anything from there. In any case, they have this case and they need to know. They tried to prove it. They don't have a proof. So my havela, what's the answer? They found some other statement, much more direct. Anything that's Torah law goes by the higher currency. Anything that's rabbinic law goes by the lower currency. And this is rabbinic because even though boshet is by Torah law, how to determine what the amount of boshet is, the amount is all rabbinic. So we're going to go with half a zuz. So now he goes to the guy, you have to pay half a zuz. So Amar Le'ahu Gavra, the one who got the thing blown in his ear, says, Ho'ilu pag dezuzehu lo ba'ina. That's nothing. I'm not even going to bother. I don't need this half a zuz. Don't. It's almost like mocking me. I don't need a half a zuz. Just keep it. Nitve la'aniin. He says, don't keep it. He says, give it to poor people, right? This happens a lot, right? Someone gives you something, you're like, just give it to charity. Hadro amrle nitva ne'ale. But then he changed his mind. He said, you know what? I'll take it. I'll go buy myself something nice, right? Hanukkah, I'll go buy myself a nice sufganiyah. Okay, I don't know that you could buy one anymore for half a zuz. It used to be maybe, but not anymore. But anyway, right? I'll go buy myself something nice with it. Amalei Rav Yosef, too late. Kvar zachu be'aniyim. The aniyim already took rights to this, and it's not yours anymore. Now you might say there's nobody poor here in the court. Anan yad aniyin anan. We are like the hands of the poor people. Okay, and we're going to get into this tomorrow. But we acquired this on behalf of the poor people, so you can't take it back. Okay, that was a total aside, this story about the boshet, and we tried to prove from our Mishnah. We couldn't prove from our Mishnah. In any case, we're going into the story. Tomorrow, we'll start with some really interesting things about people who commit things to charity. Are you allowed to change your mind about it? Very good question that comes up from our sugya. Okay, quick review. We started with the seolim and chitim, and in the end, understood our Mishnah differently, really, that you don't really collect if you're claiming something else. So you're only going to collect if you can prove it, or if you're claiming the same thing. If you're claiming something different, then really Ruth won't have to pay. If it's the Gadol Katan case and all that, unless she grabs it, then she can keep it. Then we had to explain what the Shnehem Chayavim was. We had some back and forth about what that really means. Then we had the shor shenagach arba'au chamish shvarim. We saw Rabbi Meir, we saw Rabbi Shimon. We connected Rabbi Meir to Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Shimon to Rabbi Akiva, which then we said, could that really be? And yes, we said it could be. And then we moved on to this issue of the boshet. And with that, we'll finish for today. Wishing everybody Shabbat Shalom, Chanukah Sameach, and this was a rough week. Lost a lot of soldiers and people who also we thought were captives, and turns out are also not alive anymore. We're hoping for hopefully better news and a better week coming in the week ahead. Shabbat shalom.